Hey guys, welcome to Chapter 12, which is over troubleshooting Windows and its applications. Let's first go over the objectives for this chapter. We will first learn about Windows tools to help you troubleshoot Windows and some of its problems that happen with applications. There are lots of applications, lots of tools you can find for troubleshooting your Windows platforms, whether it's Windows 7, Vista, XP, 8, and now Windows 10. So we'll go over some of those, and you'll know that some do change from platform to platform. They may not be there, or even the way you use them may change. Next, we'll learn about general strategies and steps you can take to troubleshoot and solve any type of computer problem roughly. Learn how to troubleshoot blue screen stop errors and improve those system shutdowns. And the end of the chapter will be over how to learn how to troubleshoot problems with those applications. So let's go ahead and jump right on into the chapter now. We'll kind of show you some of those tools. You can refer in your text to Table 5.1 on pages 212 through 216 for it's kind of a quick reference for many of the troubleshooting tools that are offered in your Windows operating systems. You can also look in Chapter 12 at Table 12.1 for a very lengthy tool description and it'll also tell you which platforms those tools are available on. I'll show you some of those now. You can see here some of the tools and the descriptions for each of those. Some of those you may recognize from previous chapters, some that you may not, such as the backup and restore. We just went over that one here recently in another chapter. Check disk, you just went over that one as well. You'll see the compatibility mode. You'll actually use that in your lab sims for this week. You'll see we have many others. We've already used Device Manager. You might use that pretty often. Disk Cleanup, we just used that as well. Disk Defrag, once again, do not use this if you have a solid state drive. Group Policy, this is a very powerful tool. If you want some practice with this, I recommend making sure that you use a search engine to look up some common group policies that you might want to put on a computer just for testing. If you are using a virtual test machine, you can do that as well. You may want to even use this at home in case there are some things you don't want to occur on your computers at home. There are many group policies that are standard in the business environment that you should employ. And over the last 10 years or so, one of the most powerful ones that's being deployed is the group policy, where you can disable the USBs so that people cannot put a flash drive in and possibly remove some of your important documents. Here's some more. The Memory Diagnostic tool, very helpful to test your memory. Network and Sharing Center, get very familiar with this. You will use it for troubleshooting network issues all the time. Regedit or Registry Editor, you can use this to view, but not only view, but to actually edit the registry. It's very dangerous, so make sure that you back up the registry before doing anything, and just make sure you do a lot of research before you go making any type of changes into the registry. I want to make a comment here about safe mode. You can see that this is a tool that's been used for quite a while. Windows Vista, XP, Windows 7, even Windows 8. When we move to Windows 10, how you access safe mode has been dramatically changed. So make sure you look into that. One of the easiest ways now with Windows 10 to access safe mode is to change your startup menu in msconfig. Once you get into safe mode and make your changes, if you're trying to remove some viruses or whatever, you'll need to go in once again in msconfig and then uncheck the safe mode button so that you start up Windows in a normal manner. There's msconfig, as I talked about, with system configuration. Very good tool to get familiarized with. A lot of times when you have slow startups, if you go right here, you'll see why those startups are so slow. MSInfo32, we've used that a few different times throughout the course, so lots of tools available. Taskkill.exe, some people like this, some have never even heard of it. This is kind of nice if you want to use this rather than stopping it in your startup or your task manager. Windows Defender. This is for malicious software as well. Now, if you want to bring up the Windows Update, you can go through it here. And the last tool to show you is Windows XP mode, which we've talked about before, just making sure that you can run those legacy applications. Now we'll talk about a systematic method to solve problems used by a lot of computer expert troubleshooters in this 6-step diagram. Now, when a computer doesn't work and you are the one responsible for fixing it, you should generally approach the problem first as an investigator and discoverer, and being very careful not to compound the problem through those actions that you take. Then you should ask questions until you understand the source of the problem. As we've talked about before, ask those basic questions. Then a systematic method like this should be used to troubleshoot the entire problem. As I said, step 1, interview that user and back up all data. Now, as we go through these 6 steps, there are 13 rules that are introduced here that can be very useful when doing these troubleshooting. And troubleshooting rule number 1 here is approach the system or approach the problem systematically. It means start at the beginning and walk through it very carefully. If you find more than one problem on the same computer, as I've stated before, only work on one problem at a time. That way you're making sure you focus and then get it fixed. Then you can address those other issues. If there's too many variables, you're just going to keep going in circles. So trying to solve more than one problem at a time can get really confusing to you as the troubleshooter. As you're working here in step 1, make sure, as I said, to ask some of those basic questions. When did the problem start? What programs or software were you using? Has there been any recent changes made to the system, or has there been any recent electrical problems, such as with a thunderstorm? Ask the user to reproduce the problem so that you can see all the steps that were taken to get to that point. And for the most part, users are very happy to reproduce that problem. They want you to see that they reported a real problem and that they're not just being a hindrance. So engaging your customer in the troubleshooting and problem resolution is always acceptable. Another rule here in step 1 of the process is your troubleshooting rule number 2, which is to establish your priorities. Decide what your first priority is. And when practical, ask the user for help kind of deciding those priorities. Another rule number 3, is to beware of user error. Now, if you suspect this, ask the user to show you the problem and watch what the user is doing. As an outside perspective, your skills can really help here in seeing something that could be a user error. Another rule here, as rule number 4, is to keep your cool and don't rush. A wrong move during this troubleshooting process can be very costly, so plan out your moves and research the problem before just jumping in. And as I said, the last part of step 1 is to definitely back up any important data that's not currently being backed up before you begin working. If the computer won't boot to Windows Desktop, use Windows Explorer to copy files to a flash drive or external hard drive. If Windows Explorer can't be used, then remove the hard drive, connect it to a USB port on another computer, and see if you can then copy that data onto another computer, or if you have a hard drive testing kit, with a SATA cable or whatever type of hard drive you're interfacing with, see if you can't get the data onto another computer, even if it's with a hard drive kit that you're going to use through a USB to plug into another computer, so that it kind of treats it like a flash drive. Now next we'll take a look at step 2, which is examining the system and make your best guess, establishing that theory.